about the causal theory. So under the causal theory, there is an initial naming event. And what we mean by this is that you can come up to the item gold. A scientist may have discovered gold with all of its properties, and at that time gave it a name, which is gold. The name kind of sticks to it, and now people who don't know what exactly gold is still use the word gold anyway, just because now we're used to calling anything that looks like gold, gold. So really under the causal theory, there is an initial naming event. We do not care about the details of the event. All we know is that there is sort of a christening effect for the name, or basically when a name is just given and becomes part of daily use or a habit. So what does the causal theory have to say about the distinction between canary and penguin as they relate to the category bird? If I were to say think of a bird, the first thing that would pop to your mind is a canary. The last thing to pop to your mind will be a penguin probably. If I were to say think of a meat-eating, carnivore, wild animal, the first thing you might think of is a lion. A hyena, on the other hand, might not be the first thing you think of, although it still fits the description. So under the causal theory, lion is a perfect example of a meat-eating, carnivorous, wild animal. A hyena is also a perfect example. We know, of course, that they shouldn't both be perfect examples. This is called the problem of asymmetry. Now, both the classical and the causal theory have problems when it comes to asymmetry. So both problems so far cannot handle fuzziness, and they both cannot handle asymmetry. Again, by asymmetry, what we mean is that canary is a closer example to bird than, say, penguin is. So there's an asymmetry in membership to the category bird, but the causal theory cannot show us this, and the classical theory also cannot show us this. So both theories, the classical and the causal theory, cannot handle fuzziness or asymmetry. And for that reason, causal theory, you are fired as well. Now let's look at the last type, or the last theory of concepts we're going to discuss here is the prototype theory. The theory of prototypes, in its simplest form, suggests that there are degrees of membership. So let's say we are talking about the category bird. The category bird would look something like this. There's a central, what we call a central member of the category, or another word for it is a prototypical member. Some just call it the typical member. This would be the member that first pops to your mind when you think of the category bird. So that would be, for example, canary. And let me just give a word of caution here. These prototypes are different when it comes to different cultures. So in one culture who lives near penguins, a penguin might be the first thing to pop to mind when they mention the category bird. But for now, let's just take one example, which is an example of a culture which thinks about a canary first thing when they hear the category bird. Assuming that's the case, we might think of other types of things that resemble canaries. So a sparrow might be a close example. A blue jay might also be a close example. But a bat might take us a while to think of. And even further away would be a penguin. Now if you notice, the length of the line here is very important. So these are very small, close lines. That means that these members are more close in membership to the category bird because they resemble the prototypical member canary. Bat is a bit further away, and so is penguin. Right off the spot, this difference in degree of membership to the prototypical member solves for us the problems that we had with the previous theories. So now we can explain asymmetry. We can also explain fuzziness. How is that? Well, so a sparrow is a very good member or good example, and sometimes we call this a good exemplar of the category bird, because there's a small close line. Penguin is not a very good example of the category bird because it is further away. But at the same time, penguin is a very good example of the category animals that swim. So this is where you get into the problem of fuzziness and its solution. You think of penguin, but you know that penguin is a member of more than one category in your mind. Penguin is a member of the category bird. It's also a member of the category animals that swim. But it's a better example of this one, and it's a not so good example of this one. So there's a bit of fuzziness in the membership. Should I consider penguin to be a bird, or should I consider it to be an animal that swims? It's kind of in between. Now with the prototype theory, you can understand that there are different degrees of membership to a category, and that solves for us the problem of fuzziness as well. So now we have a solution for the problem of asymmetry and the problem of fuzziness, and therefore the prototype theory so far is the best theory out of all 4 theories. So to wrap things up, we discussed theories of concepts. Why did we discuss theories of concepts? Because under the last lecture we talked about how meaning comes about, how reference works, and there were 2 main theories of reference. One was a denotational theory, if you recall. The second was a representational theory, which suggested that what mediates the process is a mental image or a concept, a mental representation. Our task in this lecture was to find out what constitutes this concept. We said that this concept can be viewed in more than one way, and that there are several theories which discuss concepts. The first theory is the image theory, and we've seen why this theory will not do. The classical theory was also thrown out the window along with the causal theory for their incapability of handling asymmetry and fuzziness. The only theory here that was able to handle both asymmetry and fuzziness and explain speaker differences was the prototype theory. Hope that's clear, and that's it for today's lecture. See you next time.